Hi, welcome back Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again and I hope you're doing well. Today we're going to be doing the next 5 chapters of our Dragonlance story, chapters 2 through 6 of the second section, or book as they are labeled in the book. So I know this set of chapters was kind of, a lot happened and yet not a lot happened, if you know what I mean. Like, we progressed through the story, but I don't feel like a lot of huge things happen. So when I went over everything I wanted to discuss for this set of chapters, it was a little bit of a smaller amount, just since nothing huge happens, and I wanted to discuss less things since we don't have quite as much development in that way. So today might be a shorter class, I'm not sure, we're just going to have to see how it goes. Alright, let's go ahead and jump on in. I would always like to hear how you're liking the book and the story and everything, so if there's anything that you'd like to say down below on the book as a whole so far, how you're enjoying it, what you think, if you're rereading it, how you're reading it again, that kind of stuff, I would love to hear about it as always. Alright, so our recap for this section is just like a lot of little things. So Lord Ariakus visits Kitiara, which he was not very happy with her, but we hear Kitiara's plan for how she's planning on taking back the war and being on the winning side of the war again, as well as we meet Lord Sloth, Lord Soth, S-O-T-H, no L, as well as we have that poem in the middle, which was very interesting, that poem that showed us what his history was like and how he became a cursed knight. Lorana does get captured, despite their best efforts to try and not be captured and to not fall into the trap. Lorana was indeed taken in the end by Lord Soth, and Flint and Tass are the only two to escape. And then we finally switch back over to Tanis and that group, and they are alive, which I'm sure probably most of you guessed already, but it is always nice to have confirmation that yes, they did not all die in the sea, but instead now they're trapped under the sea in the old city of Istar, which the gods blew up and sunk to the bottom of the sea. So they're trapped in the ruins under the sea of the old city of Istar. And they discover a little bit about Barum. Not tons yet. We do see more from Barum already. Like, we know more than the others do since we had that little bit of his memory. But they are finally starting to learn a little bit about Barum. And Caramon dreams about the Tower of High Sorcery and what exactly happened when he saw Razlan kill him. And then Tanis talks to one of the sea elves, and it seems like they might be able to get some help to get themselves out of the ruins of Istar. So hopefully we will get them back to the surface. We will have to see what happens there. And that's basically all that happens in this chapter. I mean, we do see a little bit of development between Tika and Caramon, and we see a little bit with like the mage that's down there and stuff like that, but we don't really see too many exciting things happening in this set of chapters. It's a little more of a setting us up for new things to come. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the next topic, or the first topic of the day, I guess I should say, since we just finished our recap. Something that has been brought up a little bit the last couple of chapters and a little bit in the section that we read before this one, the last set of chapters, was similarities to the dream that happens toward the beginning-ish of Winter Night, Dragons of Winter Night. How they had that horrific dream that they were all trapped in and all shared. And now it seems like some of the things are coming true. So Strum's death is one of the things that has come true. Razlan has left Caramon to die, just like he did in the dream. So he was helping Caramon to the tower until Razlan became strong enough and Caramon weak enough that he just left him there to be killed. And that is exactly what Razlan does on the boat, where he knows that there might they might all die, and he just leaves them to fend for themselves. Kit has entered the fight. That happened obviously last book, but that's about the same time that Strum dies. Kit enters the picture. So about the same timing was in the dream, I remember. I don't remember exactly where we see Strum and where we see Kit, but I do know that Strum and Tanis are battling, and all of a sudden Kit shows up in the dream. So it's kind of a similar timing. What other similarities will come from the future and the future of the book to the dream, we don't know yet. But we do see these several similarities, and we see that some of the characters have mentioned that this is similar to the dream. I believe it was Flint that mentioned that Strum's death was like the dream. And since then in this book, we've had a couple people mention the dream that they all shared, and how it kind of seemed like things might be coming true, and worried that in the future more things were going to come true. If I missed any similarities that you've noticed, go ahead and put it down below. I thought I had gotten all of them, but I'm not perfect. So if you did notice anything in particular that I missed, go ahead and comment down below. I would love to talk about the similarities and to get anything that I have missed. So I really wanted to talk about that just because the book and the story is finally really interweaving. So we've had this dream, which it did have its purpose in the moment. It did have its purpose with having to go through the dream and to beat the dream in order to get to the dragon. But nobody actually died. We know that Razlan mentioned in the dream that until you recognize that it was a dream, you would die in the dream. And that it was implied that you wouldn't wake up outside of the dream, that you would be killed if you didn't realize that it was a dream and would wake up yourself. So it was a concern that these people dying in this dream were going to be dead in real life once the people who got out of the dream woke up, and nobody died from it. So it's kind of interesting. Sorry, I had a little bit of yawn there. Anyway, a little bit interesting that we don't know how it meant to be that they died. How am I trying to say this? Let me gather my thoughts a little bit to try and make sure I'm really clear about what I'm trying to say. So, at least to me, whether you took it this way or not, I thought Razlan meant that if you died in the dream and you didn't figure out it was a dream in time, you would not wake up from the dream and you would be dead in real life. But part of me wonders, now that we're seeing these couple of similarities, that if you didn't believe that it was a dream and you didn't wake up because you figured out that it was a dream and woke yourself up, that maybe the dream became real life. So maybe Strum didn't realize that it was a dream. We don't know. It's never told. It's never said anything about the dream and whether people figured it out or not. We just all know that they woke up alive and we felt relieved. Or maybe they weren't going to die at all and that was just Razlan saying something. We don't know. Though Razlan is usually right. But maybe Strum didn't believe it was a dream and died in the dream. And now he is dying a similar death in real life. And that is how the death of that dream worked. It's hard to say. Either way, it's like an interweaving of the story. We've got the story from before and we've got the story that's happening now, and both things are coming together and there's having a new purpose. Because like I said, other than getting through the obstacle to beat the dragon that was at the Sylvanisty area, we don't know what other real purpose that dream had, even though it kept seeming to come back, and it would seem like a very important point in the story. And now it's coming back, and now we're weaving it together again, and the authors are coming together and saying, hey, this is something that needed to be noticed. This is still occurring. This is something that's still possibly going to happen. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the similarities keep going, and if it is true that more deaths are going to happen because they didn't believe it was a dream, or more deaths are going to happen in similarities because it was like a projection of the future. We don't know, because not everything is similar. Not everything is just like it was, but there's enough similarities to wonder what's going to happen and who's going to be the next to fall. Yeah, so we kind of get some answers and we kind of get some questions from the similarities as well. So like answers from about the dream, and now we're having more questions about like, oh well, what does it actually mean? What did that dream actually mean, and how is it going to progress? Yeah. So if you have any comments at all on what you think about the dream and how it's coming back now, please comment down below. I would love to have a conversation with you about it, because the dream is always something that's so ambiguous, in my opinion. Even though I've read the books several times, I still feel like the dream is like a cloud that hangs over all the characters, and from the moment that they have the dream till the very end, it doesn't really ever go away, and you're constantly wondering what the dream really meant and if it's going to come true in real life for everybody, and if it's haunting them a little bit. So would love to hear your ideas and suggestions down below. Alright, so the next thing I would like to talk about is going to be Caramon insight. We have gotten a lot more character development on Caramon in the last time when we saw them at the end of the boat. When we mentioned the part that Razlan killed Caramon in the Tower of High Sorcery, and also this last little bit, this little part with Tika and his dream and all that, we really see in-depth character development even in just this small little space of time. And I think it's very important because up until this point, Caramon has not been a huge focus. He's not somebody who's really developed. He's not someone who's changed. He's not someone who we really have seen in depth in their past. We haven't seen in depth in their thought processes. We haven't seen a big change. We haven't seen really much of anything. So even though we love Caramon, or at least I really like Caramon, I don't know about you guys, I always really like Caramon and think he's such a great guy. But there isn't anything super in-depth like Tanis, or for example Razlan, who's this character that's kind of an enigma, and we're really constantly reviewing him and coming over and seeing more facts and all that kind of stuff. So he's kind of somebody that's a little bit like Strum, where through most of the story we really like Strum. We don't really see tons of details until Strum's almost dying, and then all of a sudden we see a whole bunch of Strum and really get to know him really well. So till now we didn't really know tons about Caramon, other than, you know, he's this twin brother and he's treated terribly, and we're always wondering why he lets himself be treated this badly. And we see him falling in love with Tika, and that's about it. So now we've really gotten to know more about Caramon, and we're gonna learn, I think, even more with this change with not having Razlan around. But this one little portion that's really focused on him really gives us at least I thought it was a really good insight. Maybe you guys didn't think it was all that much, but to me, this little section is really important in understanding Caramon and Razlan's relationship. At least from Caramon's point of view. Razlan, I don't think I'm ever sure about where Razlan is on their relationship. No matter how many times I've read the story, I still feel like Razlan, as I've mentioned plenty of times before, is an enigma, where you can never truly pin him down. I've even read The Twist of the Twins, which is the trilogy that's after this, and focuses on Razlan and Caramon, and I do learn a lot more about Razlan as well as Caramon. Razlan in particular, and a little bit more of his motivations, and yet at the same time I feel like I don't totally know him, because a lot of things that you wouldn't think would matter to Razlan matters, and he deviates from a lot of things. So I know it's kind of really ambiguous considering, but for those of you who haven't read it, I don't want to spoil it. So if you want to learn a lot more about Razlan and yet still be confused by him, read The Test of the Twins after this. They're good books, and eventually, hopefully, we'll be able to cover those as well. But anyway, let's get back to the here and now in the book we're at right now, and Caramon in particular. I had never really gotten this insight before this reading. Maybe I wasn't looking for it very well. Maybe I'm just blind. Maybe I don't know. But I felt like Caramon's side of this relationship between Razlan and himself finally just clicks. Like, really, I feel like I sort of kind of get why Caramon lets Razlan treat him the way he does. And that is because Caramon, for his whole life, or at least from when he was a child, and maybe that's because of living with Razlan as a child, he developed this need. But he has a desperate need to be needed. Like, not needed in the fact that, like, somebody loves him, like Tika, and, you know, makes her life better with him in it because of their love, and have a normal need for somebody else, a normal caring and normal feeling like this person makes my life better and I want them in my life. He literally needs to be needed. Like, in the fact that Razlan needs him to take care of him, needs him to be his strength because he doesn't have any. He needs to be absolutely essential to the survival of another person. That they can't do things on their own, that they can't handle living by themselves, that they can't physically or emotionally get through the day without him. Which is why Razlan is so important at this point, because he cannot function as his own human being. He is defining himself as a person by how Razlan needs him. He even mentions that Tika doesn't need him the way Razlan needs him, and that need that Tika has for him is not a need that is enough. It is not essential enough to her being for him to have it replace Razlan's need for him. Kind of like somebody who just wants to be able to fix somebody. I think that's a little bit who Caramon is that he likes to fix people. And Razlan's always been that person who he can fix, or at least help fix, feel like he's fixing him, giving him something that he needs. So Caramon is a very, very, very dependent person. We kind of see Caramon as like, or at least I've seen Caramon as an independent person who is somebody who can stand on their own and is helping Razlan out because he loves Razlan. But really, Razlan, emotionally wise, obviously we're not talking about physically wise, because physically wise, that's the whole point, is that Razlan needs Caramon physically. But emotionally and maturity wise, Razlan is the one that is independent, and Caramon is the one that's dependent. So we really have always seen the dynamic so far, at least in my opinion, that Razlan is dependent on Caramon because Caramon does all these things for him and makes it so he can last through the day. But really, if we're looking at it, especially from Caramon's point of view, we have totally blown that perspective out of the water, and it is really Caramon who needs Razlan. Because technically, Caramon could be replaced by anybody who is willing to put up with Razlan crap and to be put up with being ordered around. Anybody could give him his tea. Anybody could walk under his shoulder and help support him or carry him places. Anybody could replace Caramon physically for what Razlan needs at any time, any place, any point. Not saying that they would be able to be put up with Razlan like Caramon does, but physically, anybody could do Caramon's job. But nobody can fill Razlan's shoes for Caramon, and the emotional connection that Caramon has to being needed can only be fulfilled through Razlan, because there is nobody in the story other than Razlan who is in need of somebody else physically, or in a way like anybody who is disabled enough that they would need somebody else to take care of them in the story, but Razlan. So Caramon is really the dependent person, and Razlan is the independent person, which is really interesting. And it's why we find out that Razlan is so important, and that he puts up with all the crap that Razlan gives him. And it also shows, along with this, is that how close Caramon and Razlan's connection is. Razlan may not want that connection, may not want to acknowledge that connection, but it shows that they do have it, because even when they were very little kids, Razlan depended on Caramon to take care of him and to help him with his nightmares and to be his support system. So Razlan resents that connection, and we've always seen that he resents Caramon. We never really know necessarily why, other than that he has a very strong, able body that Razlan wishes that he had. But other than that, we didn't really get why he resents it. But now we see that he resents it because it's just so. It connects him so much to another person when he is the dependent person. He's somebody who wants to be independent, who wants to be away from his disability, I guess you could say. But Cameron craves it. We see it now that he really, really craves that connection. He needs it to survive. He is the one that is emotionally crippled and can't stand on his own 2 feet because he is so linked to Razlan from even when he was really, really young. So I wanted to bring this up not only because of because of character development, because that is always something to focus on, always trying to see how we're changing and where we're getting to, because all of these changes in these characters are going to be what leads us to the end. That's why the characters need to be able to change, because they obviously couldn't fix the problem in the beginning, otherwise they wouldn't have to go through all this stuff to fix whatever's the problem is. But also because it's really given us a chance to focus on this relationship that, at least in my opinion, has been totally ununderstandable up until this point. And to really delve into something new, this new information, this new perspective, this new way of looking at things, and seeing where this information and where this perspective and where this knowledge is going to lead us forward through the story, seeing how this changes things, see how we progress. So we'll come to see how Caramon is without Razlan, and we're going to see how Razlan is without Caramon. And at this point, we don't really know if Razlan survived in the library, but if Razlan did survive, which, considering there's a set of 3 books that are about Razlan and Caramon after this series, I'm guessing that is a very highly likely. I'm sure everybody has guessed that that's highly likely because Razlan is such a big character. But we're going to see if he survives, first of all. And then we'll see who is the one that pulls through and is able to survive without the other. And how that dynamic of whoever can or can't survive without each other, how that affects the story and the characters moving forward. Let me know if you have any guesses on who you think is going to be the one that can't get past the separation. Whether it's going to be Razlan still needing Caramon in the end for his strength and stability and not be able to take care of himself, or if it's going to be Cameron who is emotionally attached and Razlan is a necessary piece of his person, whether he's going to be able to get over that or not. Let me know what your thoughts, feelings, whatever else down below. I would love to have a conversation with you about what you think is going to happen in the coming chapters and the whole relationship and dynamic of Razlan and Caramon. So the next topic I want to talk about is corruption. And Lord Soth has really brought forward all the corruption that we have seen in the last couple of books. It's really brought that theme up for me personally, especially since a lot of times themes in books are that humans are so easily corrupted, and so I felt like he was a really strong example of that. That's what I felt like when I read it, was how easily corrupted the human race can be, and that kind of concept. So It's in a lot of fantasy stories, like, another one that's really popular on that is like Lord of the Rings. It's like none of the humans could, or even any of the beings, but a hobbit who has literally kind of the purest heart, race of beings with the purest hearts. Not all of them, though. Obviously Bilbo couldn't, but Frodo in general had the purest heart that you could have to carry this ring. So I felt like I saw that in Lord Soth's story, and that poem that was about him and his wife and everything that happened with them that made him be cursed into this undead form. And we've talked about corruption actually quite a bit in previous classes over the course of the different chapters. So I felt like I really wanted to touch on it as a theme in general and how huge the corruption is at this point in the story. So we've got Lord Soth as a prime example of corruption and how the Dark Queen made it so he didn't prevent the cataclysm from happening, even though he could have, and the gods gave him that opportunity. But he had whispers in his ear about his wife cheating on him, and he went home instead and let the cataclysm happen. So quick, though obviously Lord Soth in the beginning was not the best guy. I mean, he got rid of his first wife. I'm pretty sure he murdered her, probably, so he could marry this elf woman. And though he did treat her good and he did love her, he was jealous and not a good guy in his heart of hearts, and so he was that easily corrupted to believe that she betrayed him. And we just see how on a basic level people are so easily corrupted at times. As well as far as humans go, we also see how the knights are so easily corrupted. They're the ones that were supposed to have the best, most pure intentions, the best motto, the most chivalrous, most justified, most... Do you get where I'm going with all this? I'm trying to think of the word. There's a particular word I feel like that I'm missing. But they're supposed to be the ones that have the best morals, the ones that try and treat people right and are on the side of good. They're the ones that are supposed to treat people like they're important and to defend them and their honor, and to have great honor, to have great morals, and to be somebody who is above the average everyday human wants and needs and demands of life. So their corruption is a really hard hit to the human race. It's like even these people who believe in justice and serving people right and being very courteous and defending honor has been lost in power struggles, been lost in wanting glory, lost in everything that is against what they actually truly made the code and the measure to be believed in, has gone out the window. So we see that corruption and this evil in this world has even touched the humans that were supposed to be really good people, like Strum. It just shows how strong the convictions and a knighthood could be when you actually were that kind of person. Strum was for sure the knight of knights, the knight that you were supposed to be. That's what the knighthood was supposed to be like. Somebody who wasn't quite so rigid in prejudices and power struggles and all this stuff, and that's why he was able to lead successfully and able to help beat the army. So we just really see how far the knights had strayed from where they were supposed to be and how corrupted they became because of it. And we see the elves, who are supposed to be superior to humans. The elves who believe themselves as not even fully a part of the world because they are superior to the world. They are so much closer to what godlike people should be. How pure of heart they're supposed to be and how wonderful they're supposed to be. And yet they are one of the first ones that we see that has been corrupted. They are against everybody and anything of the world. They can't even work together. They're against the other races of elves. They are just as bad as the humans and so easily corrupted as the humans are. To be honest, the elves even seemed like they were worse, because even though the knights were against anybody who wasn't human, at least they weren't against other humans. I mean, come on, at least they stood by their own race. But no, the elves couldn't even stand the other sections of elves. They just wanted to kill each other. And that is unbelievable, that they would think that they are so much mightier and greater and more perfect than humans, and yet they are falling even farther past where the humans were, with just a little bit of corruption in the world. Just finally, the evil starts to come back, and they crumble much quicker than the human race did. We see Tanis, in a way, being corrupted, because now he is lying, and he's acting nuts, and he's all over the place, and he was with Kit for a while and lied about it, and we just see that he is taking a dive for the worst, and all this stuff happening in the world, all this corruption and things like that, is kind of permeating his soul a bit, and he's the person who is meant to be so strong. He's supposed to be this leader that stands by his convictions. He's supposed to be the Strum who is unbendable. And yet we see him bending under the stress and under the evil and under the temptations that are around him. We see him crumbling and falling at this point. We have hope that he will rise again. He's kind of got himself a little bit together between when they first get down to Istar and he's like going nuts and to where he's talking to this sea elf. It's like he's a little bit more oriented. But we're going to see if he can pull himself out of this corruption that has made him a little nuts and a lot less trustworthy. And Biram. We see the corruption with Biram. In the fact that he was so wanting this gem that he ends up killing his sister on accident because he really wants this gem. And he can't see the evil around him, and he's so focused on riches or how beautiful it is or whatever else. We're not really totally clear with his memory on what exactly it was that drew him to that gem, where he couldn't even listen to his sister, and ended up killing her, and has now been living in a torturous hell, and according to him, where he can't die, and he just lives in misery, always being hunted. So we really see where not only corruption is, but also where it's led them. We see that Biram is now in this state where he can't die, and he's being hunted, and he's living life that's misery, and he just wants it to end. We see the same thing with Lord Soth. He's been corrupted, and now he can't die, and now he's got to live forever in that cursed state where he can never be free of it. We see Tanis and his corruption, and how now it's causing him to destroy the trust and within his friends, and even destroying a little bit of the friendships, possibly. We don't know yet, but he is breaking down things that were supposed to mean the most to him. And we see with the elves and the knights how they are losing this war because they can't get over themselves, and how the corruption is helping the queen win at this point. The elves, yes, and the knights, yes, have both started to dig themselves out, but we'll see if they can actually get out of the corruption that they're in. Now, on the flip side, we do see the incorruptible bonds that are in this story. To start off, we've got Flint and Tanis and their friendship and their trust. Though Flint is wrong that Tanis would never go to Kit at all. He's very not trustful of the fact that Tanis would be with Kit, and he was. But we do know that Flint believes that he is not with her, and that is 100% true. he believes that everyone is telling a lie, that he's joined the Dark Army and that he's with Kit, and that even though he's not actually with her at that moment, that she's just sent him on a mission or whatever else. Flint knows for sure he did not go over to the dark side. And yes, though Tanis was weak and he was with Kit for a little while under semi-true circumstances, so yes, he couldn't just say, hey, I'm not actually part of the Dark Army, and run away from her. But he didn't also have to sleep with her. So, I mean, kind of a little bit of a borderline thing there. But he is correct in the fact that Tanis would never join the evil side, and he would never abandon his friends in that way for Kit. And he didn't. He did lie about it, and he is going a bit nuts, and he is ruining some of the trust that he has built with the people who he is with and the people that he loves. But he has not been corrupted to the dark side. So we do see that Flint's trust in Tanis and knowing that Tanis would do the right thing in the end, that is something that is incorruptible no matter how many times Tanis, Kit, Soth, what was the guy's name? Oh my gosh, I always forget his name. He's such a stupid person. The guy who they captured and they were trying to make the exchange for. Oh my gosh, I forgot his name last video too. Anyway, that dude. No matter how many times they keep saying he is with the Dark Army and he's with Kit and all that other stuff, Flint knows for sure that Tanis would not do that, and that is the incorruptible force that Flint and bond that Flint and Tanis have together, that they have forged. Such a deep friendship that Flint just knows that they're lying, no matter how many times people tell him, no matter how many times Lorana believes it, or Tass might question it and think, hey, it's possible. Flint knows he would not stay with her as the Dark Lady. The uncorruptible bonds for Tanis is Riverwind and the others forgive Tanis. They still follow him even though they were hurt, and Tanis has been lying and doing things that is not okay to them, and it makes them question him and his judgment. They decide to forgive him after they've been angry for a while, obviously. But they forgive him and they trust him because they know that when it counts, he's going to not abandon them and lead them right. And that he's just doing his best to protect everybody. And Lorana. Though Lorana is corruptible with her bond with Tanis, but that's because Tanis' own fault. He's never been very good with his relationships at this point so far. Anyway, but Lorana's spirit is unyielding. No matter how many times she feels like Tanis has been lost to her and her heart has been destroyed, no matter how many awful things has happened to her, no matter how much she's endured, how much prejudice, no matter her own family basically disowning her because she ran away, even though she's helping the war efforts and those kind of things, and they just basically disown her and throw her away. No matter through all of that, Lorana still remains unbending and fights on. She has become such a strong character from the lovesick little girl who joined Tanis just because she wanted to be near him. She has really grown and become an unbreakable force. She is planning on ruining the Dark Queen's armies no matter what. No matter how sad and depressed and beat down she is, she keeps fighting and fighting and fighting. So it's kind of like the yin and the yang. We've got all the corruption happening, but then we also see those glimmers that give us hope, saying, hey, corruption, yes, is happening and the world is falling apart and people we didn't think could be corrupted are being corrupted. But we see that some things can never be corrupted, and that is why we have a chance of fighting. Because we still have these unbreakable bonds, these unbreakable things that will be for the good. Alright, now we've got, last but not least, which is the nitty gritty, as always. I actually don't have too much for the nitty gritty at this point, just two main points, and one's a little bit more of an in-depth thing than the other. So first, Lord Ariakis scares most dragons. I don't know about you, but a guy who can scare dragons is real scary. So the fact that Kitiara can stand up to him, and even though, yes, we can tell that she is scared of him, she stands her ground and she's actually pretty up in his face. Though she did have Lord Soth there, which might have also been why she could have been more courageous. But I really am excited to see how Lord Ariakis is utilized from here on out because of that one line. How can someone be so scary that they even scare most dragons? Let's keep that in mind as we continue going forward and seeing how we interact with that character. And then second, I wanted to discuss the difference between the life above the water and the city and how sunken below it of Istar. We've got above, there's war, there's conflict, it's fast-paced, it's civilization. And then below, it's peaceful and slow and removed from everything. And the people there, do make lives down there at the ruins and can live. But it's very, very few amount of people down there. So it's like this little glassed-in, protected place. So my kind of question for it is something that I think is always interesting, and I'm not sure if I know the answer to this question, even after reading it several times, is what is the reason that the authors bring us down here and reveal this lost city of Istar and the people and their life there? Especially because at this point it doesn't seem like they're going to spend that much time down there. It's been maybe 2-3 chapters, and really the actual time of spent down there and like actual book terms is like a couple days maybe, if that. So what is the point of bringing us down to this city below the sea when they just go right back up to fighting the war and being back at the surface? So if you have any thoughts or ideas on that, please let me know down below. I would really love to know about it, because at this point I always have wondered, though I think that concept is really cool and I really love seeing the sea elves. I think they're pretty cool too. What is the whole point of the authors including this section in the story? Let me know what you think. Alright, so that is the end for today's class for chapters 2 through 6, right? 2 through 6, yes. So I would love to have a conversation with you on any of the topics that I have presented or anything else that you'd like to talk about in general for the book. Go ahead and comment down below, or on Twitter for at fantasyfiction1 is my Twitter. You're welcome to go ahead and comment or post to me there, and I would love to have a discussion. As always, I love learning from you just as much as I hope you're learning from me. Okay, so for the next class, it's going to be a little bit of a longer section just because of us being almost done. I was looking through the chapters, and I think we're going to do 6 chapters this next time instead of 5. So it's going to be chapter 7 through 3, because it goes to book/section 3. And so it's and for my copy, it's page 7. Chapter 7 starts at 192 and it goes to 250. So again, chapters 7 through 3 is the section for reading for next time. So I hope this class was really good. I hope that we discussed some things that made you think. Again, as always, I'd love to hear from you down below, and I will see you in the next class. Have a great week. Bye.